Across the Sea is one of the more polarizing episodes of the show. I knew a lot of fans were going to be dissatisfied because everyone knew that this was Jacob and Man in Black's backstory. And the doubters almost demanded 5 million things to be addressed. I remember that several fans on the forums and comment sections had checklists saying the episode should cover the rules, how the cabin moves, how the Egyptians built the statue, the lighthouse, the temple, Man in Black's name, all the secrets of the smoke monster, and so on, demanding that the showrunners would tackle this episode like a marathon of answers. Instead, we were given a very biblical and magical episode. A Roman ship is wrecked off the coast of the island. There must have been a storm. One of the survivors, Claudia, ends up in the water. The rest of the survivors probably end up further up the coast. Claudia can't have been too far from the caves. She's heavily pregnant. I've placed the location here, so that the tip of this land is the end of this. She walks over to a river, possibly one of the rivers that is close to the camp, as in the survivors' camp, but it's not going to be built just yet. Much of the crew move further up north. Her mother might have seen them, but moved southwards, and saw Claudia. She takes her to the caves. Claudia gives birth to twins, Jacob and his brother. There's a blooper here that greatly annoyed me. Claudia is still pregnant after giving birth to the boys. How hard could it be to remove that moonbump belly? Another interpretation is that Claudia was still pregnant. She was going to give birth to triplets. What if there was a baby girl who was about to be born? And then mother just simply killed Claudia, preventing her from giving birth to more children.
I only picked one name.
Why wasn't Jacob's brother named? I love the idea that Man in Black was not named. I think he certainly had a name, given by mother, just like she has a name. Claudia named Jacob, while mother would eventually give Jacob's brother a name, but we were never given that. Why? I think that it gives a much bigger allure and importance to his character without giving him a name, and that whatever name they would give him in Across the Sea would remove his mystery and coolness. And it's not a rule that every character needs to be named. The most famous character in silent films is the tramp. He appeared in over 20 films, but was always just the tramp, the drinker, the janitor. Nobody complained that he was not named. If we move to newer films, we've got a bunch of characters without names. One of the most iconic figures in Western film history does not have a name. Clint Eastwood's character in the Dollars trilogy. Everyone knows that pose, that look, the poncho, the Lone Ranger, where we as the audience can't really place him, his morals, or whether or not he's a hero or not. In all 3 films in the trilogy, he is known as the Man with No Name. He gets a bunch of nicknames, just like our Man in Black, being known as the Monster, Dharma called it Cerberus. John Locke unintentionally is the first character on Lost who gives him an actual name, Adam.
Our very own Adam and Eve.
Which is very fitting in the broader picture of the show and the tie that John Locke has with the Master. Or you have the comedic situations like Barry in this Comic Con sketch.
You've got a bad attitude, Barry.
Hey! Don't call me that!
Why not? It's your name, Barry!
Having a name is one aspect that makes us human. And what does Man in Black tell Ricardo?
The devil betrayed me. He took my body. My humanity.
Throughout the Sergio Leone trilogy, the Man with No Name makes us invested. What's his motivation? What makes him tick? What's his backstory? Obviously his mother gave him a name, and he grew up with a name, but the audience doesn't know, and that works in the favor of the story and the importance of the character. Let's imagine if the showrunner simply made a clip canon and gave Man in Black a name now, just to shut up the fans. Wouldn't that be incredibly disappointing? George Lucas finally gave us the first name of Palpatine many decades after the original trilogy. It's Sheev. I was more content without knowing that. And the same goes for Lost. Claudia named her firstborn, while Mother named the other. That information is not for the audience, since in the eyes of the showrunners, Lost is better with the Man with No Name. Claudia is killed and the body could be thrown in a ditch somewhere. Mother will raise these 2 kids by herself, while the Romans will make a settlement on the north side of the island. Another thing is that the showrunners have not confirmed which year it all takes place, but there are 2 sources that have given us distinct years. On February 27, 2010, a photographer managed to get a sneak peek of the filming of this scene at Papailoa Beach, with detailed description of what was happening, and managed to get a tidbit on the shooting schedule. The shooting schedule mentioned beach camp, children, 23 AD. On May 5th, 2010, Mark Pellegrino mentions that it takes place in 43 AD. Jacob has a long way to go from that episode in 43 AD to the present. He travels a long distance and he does it alone because he lost his family in one fell swoop. How terribly lonely. There is a possibility that Mark Pellegrino meant that the end of the episode, when they are adults, is taking place at 43 AD, but it doesn't add up with Man in Black's comment that he's been living with the Roman people for 30 years. 13 years later, and we see Brother going by a beach. This is the first time we've been on this beach on the island. This is filmed at Waimanalo Beach, and it has only been on the show once, portraying Thailand. So where do I put this on my map? I could have gone crazy and placed it somewhere we've never been before, but I won't, because I don't think Mother would let the kids be too far away from the caves. So I've placed the location here, which would be Said's secret beach. We didn't see anything since it was at night, so that works well. And that means that this huge landmass behind Brother over here is part of Dave's cliff. That's actually true in real life. The Makapu Point Lighthouse Trail, which is where they filmed Dave's cliff, is actually this point here, although it's a little bit further down the coast in Oahu. Brother walks along the beach in that 2010 white boy haircut, which kinda made me unsure if this really takes place 2000 years ago. He finds the game Senate and he plays it with his brother. Jacob goes back to the caves while Brother goes to this beach. This is filmed at Papailoa Beach, and considering that our characters are close by the caves, I think it's fair to say this really is supposed to be our main beach. Jacob and his brother chase a boar and discover the evidence of other people for the first time. They hide and then run back. And this location is also very fun. It's at Nuanupali Drive, and this is the location where Kate hid in the pilot. This banyan tree is very close by the caves. Their mother takes them through the jungle and to this area. She tells them that I've made it so you can never hurt each other. Whether or not they would be able to break them, we're not entirely sure. Mother being like a prophet, speaking and acting on behalf of the divine. Jacob is able to hurt his brother and in the end inadvertently kill him. Presumably the next day we get this line from Brother.
One day you can make up your own game and everyone else will have to follow your rules.
As soon as Mother passes on the job to Jacob, he's now the prophet, it is now his game and he can create his own set of rules. So I think that at this point in time, Jacob might be able to kill his brother. He obviously can't do that anymore when he's a smoke monster. Some fans were dissatisfied with this reveal, especially with the magical harp. I guess that makes connotation to magical children's stories. I like the area, but I honestly agree with the criticism. It would be much more cooler if this was a huge rock and the reveal would be like the reveal of the Black Rock in the season 1 finale. She shows them the source and explains that one of them will have to protect it after she's done. She will then take them back to the caves. On a later day, Jacob and his brother play Senate in this fairy tale-like woods. I've previously complained about the drab look of season 6, but in this scene I kinda like it. There's something magical about this location. This is shot in the woods behind Waimanalo Beach, consisting of Australian ironwood trees, so I have placed the location further inland over here. We've never been in this place before on the show, so that's why I don't have it near the caves. Claudia visits her son in spirit form. Jacob can't see her, but Brother can. Brother is special, just like Hurley, who can see the ghosts on the island. She takes Brother on a walk across the island, all the way here. Brother would then rush back to the caves. He attempts to coerce Jacob into leaving for the other camp.
Follow you where? To the people. No, we're supposed to stay away from them. There are people, Jacob.
The brothers split. We have a 30-year time jump. In that time, brother is welcomed into the group and shortly introduces himself by the name he was given by mother. Or he might have given himself a different name to distance himself from mother. But that's not information for the audience. He's still the man with no name. He grows up with them. There is one interesting quote from The Substitute I want to highlight.
But before I was trapped, I was a man, James, just like you.
I have a hard time believing that.
Well, you can believe whatever you want, but that's the truth. I know what it's like to feel joy, to feel pain, anger, fear, to experience betrayal. I know what it's like to lose someone you love.
Some could theorize that it meant a person he fell in love with during his 30 years with the Roman people, someone who died. Some could theorize it meant mother. He's genuinely sorry for killing her. Or Jacob. It's up to the viewer. One thing we know he'll do in his 30 years on the island is to roam around. He's trying to find the heart of the island, but is unable to do so. What he does find, along with other Romans, are pockets of energies. They created several wells on the island, one of them being over here. There's a possibility of another well here, near the rock with a hole in it. In a previous video, I argued that Zoe's grid map shows this area as having a pocket of electromagnetic energy. But there is one pocket they will be interested in, and that is Area B. I think Area A is way up in the mountains as seen in the waves here, as well as my map. But Area B is a more manageable area and they will dig a well here. But hold on, if the man in black is building a well, why isn't it here? Near the orchid? Well, at the end, mother destroys the well, fills it up. And the vegetation and area is very different from the orchid. It is implied in the show that the rope that Sawyer brings will be the clue for the builders, that there is an importance to this area and that this is where they will construct the newly improved chamber. Sawyer did not bring the rope prior to Across the Sea, or else the statue would be visible. This scene takes place after Across the Sea. But more on that in the next video. Because the man in black is special, he has a connection with the island. He knows how to create a system that channels the water and the light. He and the other workers construct the chamber and are about to make an opening to the wheel here. The wheel isn't completed though, it's missing the other half, but I guess that's going to be created. Maybe they need to set up the water channeling system and connect the two halves later on. It is either 33 AD or 43 AD. Jacob visits him and they play some more Senate. They are now here. The village and the well are two separate locations, close by because Man in Black could spot the smoke. Man in Black tells him about the pockets of energy and that he's leaving the island. Jacob returns back to the caves. Later, Mother travels to the other side of the island. He shows her the light behind this wall. It's interesting that they've actually built this rock wall over here. Maybe they actually managed to fully excavate it. They weren't able to go into the light, as if it prevented like two similar poles of magnet repelling each other. There is a possibility that the other Romans got sick or got radiation poisoning. Man in Black doesn't get sick at all. Mother talks to him and then smashes his head on the rock wall. Then she has to get his body up. Either as a smoke monster she carries him up, or if she has telekinetic powers, floats his body up the ladder. Since I'm not sure she would be able to carry him on her back, she then uses her powers to fill up the well, and then goes over here to the Roman village and kills everyone. In my previous episode I made a few remarks on how it was done. If she is a smoke monster, she did the smoke monster routine. If she has other powers, she did it in that way. If she can summon the source, like a destructive security system, an earlier iteration of the smoke monster, the light in its pure form, she could have done that as well, like illustrated here. Mother takes Jacob to the source and tells him about the light. Before this episode aired, Kristen from E said the following: "You will learn much more about the history of the island and the evil and the light within. Pay close attention to every line Allison's character says and every line or lack thereof on her face." It's one of the reasons why I think Across the Sea really is a very good episode. She tells him what the light is. And I think this shot of the Cave of Light looks much better than the magical harp reveal earlier in the episode. She tells him about the job and then passes on the protector job. The next morning, Man in Black wakes up and sees his entire village destroyed. He rushes towards the caves and destroys it all. Mother arrives here. I think it's very interesting that she opens the Senate game and looks upon the Black Peace, which is now going to attack her. Man in Black kills Mother. Then Jacob comes along and beats his brother before taking him to the heart of the island. He throws him in. We can see that the light is much brighter in this episode than it is in the finale. Even after Jack has given the protector job to Hurley, the monster has died and Jack put the stone cork back in its place. It still glows dimmer. I think it's because the stone cork is not in place at this point in time. The source could be so strong that it's actively rerouting its water around it to various pockets all over the island, making sure that it powers the entire island and makes it flow. Here's an illustration of how I think it looks down there at this point in time. The source having this enormous barrier that prevents it from having too much water go into it, but Man in Black's body penetrates this barrier. The source transports the body to a stream nearby. Showrunner Damon Lindelof has called Watchmen the greatest piece of popular fiction ever produced, and some part of me believes that the inspiration of this scene might have come from Watchmen. In this graphic novel, John Osterman ends up inside an intrinsic field experiment test chamber. He's bathed in radiant light, torn to pieces. They think he's dead, but John's consciousness has survived as an electromagnetic pattern and learned to control the particles and use them to reform himself. 2 months after the destruction of his body, he appears as a blue figure in an ultraviolet light that causes sunburn to those present. He's got tremendous superpowers and is invulnerable. Even when his body is disintegrated, he can reconstruct it in a matter of seconds. He can teleport, levitate, and seize time in a non-linear fashion. I think a similar situation happened here, only the source gave away a part of itself that fused together with Man in Black's consciousness, creating the smoke monster. It took the literal shape of the source's worst memory, the volcanic activity that made it detach itself from Earth and creating a shield around itself. It's a physical manifestation of the past. Smoke is often connected to bad memories we have of vast destructions and catastrophes. And another thing it did, since I believe that inside the source is a fifth dimension that has no limits to time and space, the source's core has the past and present of everyone who will be inside its radius, inside the dome of the island. Everything from the dinosaurs to Nikki and Paolo. And I think that as Man in Black's consciousness was torn out of his body, it fused together with not only a physical form of smoke, a memory of the island's past, but I believe it also combined audio from memories of those that got into the light, both in the past and in the future. All those mechanical noises, the chains and drills, are sounds from the incident, something that happens in the future, but for the core of the source, it still knows of this event when the drill hit the pocket and spilled out this audio to the monster. Or John Locke passes through the light when he turns the wheel. He already has a memory of him at the office, with this sound effect being highlighted on the show. It originally comes from the New York City taxicabs, but we don't have a lot of characters in taxicabs on Lost, so I think that in the perspective of the monster, the ticka ticka sound is an audio that comes from the future memory of Locke. Also, I always thought that the lockdown sequence sounded a lot like the monster. Maybe that's also a warped memory from Locke. Add in sounds from dinosaurs that roamed on the island, a siren that could have been a memory from one of the characters, mixed together to create the audioscape of the monster. Jacob finds his brother's body and then takes it to the caves. Jacob then lays the bodies of mother and brother to rest there, and the audience are revealed that this is the bodies of Adam and Eve. At the time of writing that episode, House of the Rising Sun, the broad scope and mythology of the island probably just stretched back a few decades or something. Remember, they still weren't sure if they were to have more than 13 episodes of Lost. In the audio commentary, Damon Lindelof said this.
And people have asked us, at what point in the series did you guys know that those corpses were going to be the Man in Black and Mother? And we don't really like to talk about process that much, but I think that we can say that, when we were working on that episode, House of the Rising Sun, we knew that Adam and Eve were going to be mythological figures that were entirely responsible for Oceanic A15 crashing on the island. So that when Locke called them as Adam and Eve, that he'd be referring to these characters are personally responsible for us being here in some way.
Some fans criticized the reveal, wanting it to be time travelers, and I slightly understand the fan criticism here, that the skeletons should have been dust, or that Jack's comment about the decomposition doesn't align.
Any idea how long they've been here?
Long. Takes 40 or 50 years for clothing to degrade like this.
But I still really like the reveal in this episode. Let's compare it with another work. J.R.R. Tolkien was a master planner and world creator. After writing The Hobbit, it took him 12 years to create The Lord of the Rings. He was constantly expanding his world, with Silmarillion in the end. But even with The Hobbit, you could sense that he didn't have absolutely everything planned. Bilbo acquiring the ring ended up being revised in newer editions of The Hobbit, when the ring had a vaster history to it. The revised versions of The Hobbit gave more detailed descriptions about the ring, that it was a ring of power, making Gollum more aggressive and distraught about losing the One Ring, instead of willingly betting it in the riddle game. Tolkien planted a seed, but retooled it. If Lost was a written novel, with revisions like that, they would have changed Jack's line to something else. And by the way, there was a line that got cut, and that was Jack suggesting that they could have been centuries old. Locke calls them our very own Adam and Eve. The Bible begins with these two humans, and the story of Lost begins with these two individuals. Adam and Eve represents the themes that Lost dealt with. They both sinned, and especially in Season 6 with heavenly spirit and human world, Across the Sea has a lot of biblical allusions. The tree of knowledge of good and evil is the heart of the island. The tree can have many symbolic elements, but it's mostly tied to the sheltering image of the Great Mother, rooted in the earth. Man in Black and Mother can be seen as the original couple. Adam is the representation of man. The name even means man. Eve is mother, the first mother, the mother of all things. Before they arrived at Season 6, this could have been the writer's intention, that this was Man in Black and his lover, but when planning the endgame, it was a more compelling story to have Eve to be their mother, and that their shared problems come from mommy issues. Both Eve and Adam are tempted by the serpent to eat an apple from the tree. They both sinned. God cursed them, and they were now bound to the island, never to enter heaven. Everything before that was harmony, but after eating the apple of the tree of knowledge, aka the heart of the island, they broke the rules. They are the first that became transfixed with the light. It is brother who calls it beautiful. It didn't seem that Jacob was that interested in it. It was brother who was tempted, who spent 30 years looking for it, trying to take a bite of the apple. Later on we learn that Man in Black could never find the heart of the island. After all, as Adam, he was expulsed from the Garden of Eden. I also love that Michael Giacchino even titled one of Man in Black's themes on the soundtrack as Fall of Man. They were succumbed to the light, and if you believe that Mother was a smoke monster, she also went into the heart of the island, tasted the apple. Eve ate the apple first, just like it is possible that Mother went into the light first. Then they lost their humanity through violation of the rules. This is also something she warns about.
But they always want more.
Can they take it?
No, but they would try. And if they tried, they could put it out.
They always want more, she said about the light, and Alvar Hansel also said,
You know, somebody a whole lot smarter than anybody here once said that since the dawn of our species, man's been blessed by curiosity.
She learned that men always want to bite the forbidden fruit. Men are sinners. This fits very nicely with what we heard in Abaterno.
That man who sent you to kill me believes that everyone is corruptible because it's in their very nature to sin. I bring people here to prove him wrong.
Jacob didn't have a choice other than protecting the place. Man in Black was the tempted one, so that makes those two, Man in Black and Mother, a perfect couple. The showrunners could have easily made up an easy answer to this, have Rose and Bernard die in the fire attack in the 1950s, but that's a boring answer in my eyes. I think that this is a much richer explanation and ties very nicely with the themes of the show. Next episode takes us beyond the sea, the stories of the civilizations on the island. I hope you liked this video. You can subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next episode.